Housing must revert to 2012 prices in real terms, as per historical norms since 1890. What does a guy who made much of his fortune in real estate really know about real estate and bubbles, right? It's happening regardless of MA inventory or rate squatter non sequiturs. It's only deviated twice in 140 years, once after 1997 to 2008. And after 2012 until present. X200B. A. You probably should avoid using absolute terms like must. We're already rolling down the road of violating historic norms. So a graph beginning at the year 2000 somehow illustrates the situation since 1890? Think I'll pass on this advice. Lol. Fortune tellers aren't a thing. Something has been happening non-stop for 30 years. See, in the last 300 years this only happens 10 of the time. Newsflash: not everything increases at the rate of CPI. What if I made a chart that said flat-screen TVs must double their cost from 2000, e.g. cost like $4,000 to keep up with inflation? Or saying that universities must cut tuition costs in half to bring costs back in line with inflation. Ridiculous, right? Same thing. The global price of lumber and concrete doesn't care what the median income of your town is. For only $1 for the first week, then $967 a year. I will show you fancy charts with data manipulated for your confirmation bias to make the points to post to your rebubble doomer friends. From the website. If the current economy has you scratching your head, you're right, there is something rotting underneath it all. You're right, a runaway freight train is headed for you. This is why I subscribe to this sub. I love these delusional takes. Could it revert to 2012 real? Sure. If we have another terrible recession. People were out of work for years. Let me get this straight, you say it must go back to the checks notes trend line that it's been above for the last 25 years? Laughs in Australia, Canada, New Zealand, Singapore, etc., etc. Linear graph of exponential function. Graph window bias. Misleading graph. It's that easy. It is insane to think prices will go down to 2012 levels. Stay off YouTube. How dare you imply my property isn't worth what Zillow says? A house selling for $250K in 2015. Now asking $450K. What friggin' crack are you smoking? If people would simply say it's not worth it, this problem would resolve itself. You mean markets are cyclical in nature? So what goes up will come down. What blasphemy is this, lol? Shit, back in my days, we exchanged blankets for our land. Said it must go back to then. Here I thought price was driven by supply and demand. Not a serious argument. 1890 was before the Federal Reserve Bank. 1981 they changed the inflation calculation to no longer include new homes but to include owners' equivalent rent. CEOs base your salary on the inflation calculation. After 20 years of bad data, we're seeing the low salaries today. What was the population in the US in 1890 versus today? And back then the money was backed by gold as well. What's that thing they say about past performance? We changed how CPI was calculated multiple times to the point that you can't reliably use it. The government has a vested interest to have CPI be below inflation, as that keeps their costs down. CPI today is a shit measure of inflation. The real inflation were the friends we made to hide it in Ray. That shit ain't never happening. We will be lucky to just hold here for the next 3-5 years. I truly feel bad for you people. Desperation and envy leads to grand delusion like this post. I hope everything works out for you. both mentally and financially. LMMMMOMF said must tears of joy, I swear some of you chumps are delusional. Wait till rates start dropping by half a point, yummy face, yummy face. Tears of joy, tears of joy, tears of joy, tears of joy. Lol. Wouldn't another way to narrate this graph be? HPI and CPI have only been at parity twice in the last 23 years? Also, doesn't a similar graph for Canada and many Western European nations look even worse and has looked worse for longer? I seem to remember seeing something like that. Something's not right about this, it just coincidentally bottomed once it touched the other line. Laughs in Canadian government. OP is responsible for the worst threads on this and FTHB. Absolutely the worst. When you use absolutes you sound silly. Also, you posted a graph that begins in 2000 and stated values must revert to the mean. The market can stay irrational longer than you can remain liquid. Hope your fortune is managed by someone other than yourself, Einstein. Whatever helps you sleep at night in your rental, buddy. LOL must revert to some shit from 1890, okay? Or maybe the exception to your rule from 1997 to 2008 and 2012 to now means that this trend line is bunk and can't predict anything, as it has been wrong basically all of the past 30 years. I think 2018, 2020 levels would be possible. It has to be a lot bigger bubble to go to 2012 lol. This is the way. So obvious who did and did not watch the video based on their knee-jerk assumptions about where prices will go. It's a market. When people quit buying it will come down. Guess what? New homes are still selling and old homes are not coming to market unless people die. I've been saying this for a long time. 2012 prices or bust. May. Charts only tell you so much. The Feds created a big mess this time. Some people make their fortune winning the lottery. Doesn't mean they have any secret to winning the next game. Cool. Zoom out. When is the money supply going to revert to 2012? People literally got free land during a good chunk of that time. Houses would be way more affordable if you didn't have to buy the land. And didn't need electricity, plumbing, HVAC, building codes, zoning laws, and EPA laws. Next, you going to tell me that a new loaded F-150 is going to have to revert to historical affordability of the Model T? Just don't see how it would get back to 2012 prices. Lots of people would be able to buy in cash at those levels. The market can stay irrational long then you can stay solvent. Warren Buffett probably. Historical norms since 1890 proceeds to show chart from 2000-2023. I think the bubble's gonna burst. But if I was a super genius, I could tell you when. I can't believe that this can continue. It's worse than the first bubble. What I don't like what's happening is the government is allowing all of these hedge funds and foreign investors to buy a residential real estate, including China by the way. That also makes less inventory available. I am starting to believe this is not an accident and I have felt this way for a long time. I'm fortunate I bought in 2012. Prices will revert. It is inevitable. The only question is the timeline. Fiscal and monetary intervention can extend it. But with $33 trillion in debt and a $2 trillion deficit, that party appears to be over. Buckle up. Winter is coming. Ah yes, the inevitable law of O&M. By that same token, would we expect for healthcare and education costs to decrease drastically? Of course not. They have over-indexed against CPI over the last few decades. Does not mean that it's somehow time for a correction.